I highly doubt it.
The competing Catholic schools in the same area that do it for 2/3 less money, almost all the kids can read by the time they graduate middle
And where
school.
does that money come from?
Well, he's getting cooked right now, bro.
I think the privatization of public things in general is bad, and obviously that's a very...
Why would you say that?
So he's anti-capitalist, anti-privatization, anti-Trump, anti-conservative. He's anti all of it.
Okay, hello, yes.
Hello, my name is Yardo. I have a small YouTube channel. I'm a political commentator as well, much smaller than you are. I just wanted to thank everybody at Turning Point USA, USD for having this debate. And also I would thank the Turning Point USA, San Diego State, because they gave a voice to one of my dear friends who was a victim at the October 7th Nova Music Festival. And his name is Muzai. I really appreciate that you guys did that. And you have my sincere gratitude.
So this video is about Charlie Kirk going to a new university, University of San Diego, or University of California, San Diego, and debating college students on his beliefs. It's cool because the semester just opened back up, and a lot of people disagree with Charlie Kirk. A lot of people disagree with MAGA. I think Charlie Kirk represents MAGA. He's passing out Make America Great Again hats. So this should be a good one. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get into it.
I'd also like to quickly state that this is a message for the far left first, and then we'll get into what I highly disagree with you about. But I just read Hassan Piker's New York Times article where he claims that he did not stifle free speech in his chat. I do not believe that's true because I was banned multiple times for having a simple disagreement with him. That is one thing on the right that you guys do far better, is not creating echo chambers, and this is a complete amazing thing that you guys are doing right now. And I just want to let you know, right now, Hassan Piker, I will donate $5,000 to Palestine if you debate me. Now, and I 100% mean that, and I will make sure that that is as public as possible. My question for you, Charlie, is I just want to make it clear, I am against affirmative action. Of course, I do not believe, as a disabled person myself, I do not believe that affirmative action is the entirety of what DEI entails. That being said, I would be fine with DEI gotten rid of if it meant a true meritocracy in the United States. But why would I trust Donald Trump to create a meritocracy when he himself has appointed the least accomplished and the least, essentially, yeah, perfect word, the least accomplished cabinet in U.S. history, at least in my opinion.
So this is what the debate is about. The student believes, or I think he's a student. He believes that Donald Trump has appointed the least accomplished, because that's what he said, least accomplished U.S. cabinet in history. And that Donald Trump doing that is already against meritocratic systems. I usually wait to the end to give my thoughts, but I just want to touch on this subject a little bit. And this is just my opinion. I would say the same thing if Biden was in office, Obama, anyone was in office. If the president appoints you and Congress confirms you, how much more merit do you need in that system? And that's a genuine question. Because when you look at a meritocratic system, a meritocracy, what happens? You apply to a university or you apply to a job, they look at your resume, they meet with you, they interview you, then they meet with each other and say, should we hire this candidate? And what Donald Trump did for his cabinet is say, I appoint this person, President of the United States. Congress said, do we like this person? Let's vote on it. And they voted on it, and the people won. So a real genuine question is, how much more meritocratic can that system be than it already was for his cabinet? And that's a genuine question for any viewers out there.
Disagree? I can explain why I feel that way.
Well, first of all, one thing doesn't have to do with the other, but I'm going to reject the premise that it's the least qualified cabinet ever, so we could talk about that. But even if it was just Donald Trump picking his family members, it has nothing to do with the merits of DEI or getting rid of DEI, right? So that's a red herring. They actually have nothing one to do with the other. One's a repeal of a policy. One is your critique of a cabinet. So which one would you rather debate? Would you rather debate DEI and all of its implications or Trump's cabinet? It seems like you have more problems with Trump's cabinet because we actually might be on the same side of meritocracy. So want to talk about the cabinet? Whichever you prefer.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Right. I personally don't see it as a red herring, but we can talk about that.
Well,
sure.
Yeah, one doesn't have anything to do with the other, right? I mean, you can personally have hypocrisy in your own life and still do really good things in policy, right? It doesn't does necessarily equate, right?
Well, I mean, in the way that I see it is that a lot of people talk about, like when they're talking about their choice to vote for Kamala or Trump instead of Kamala, they talk about the personal aspects of Donald Trump that make them want to trust him, right? A lot of people trust him. You can see the way that people look. I mean, everybody's wearing the MAGA hats. People trust him. Why would I trust him?
Okay. So yeah, that is your contention. So
yeah.
What about his cabinet is unqualified? Let me just ask you a couple examples. So, I mean, Scott Bessent, who's one of the most accomplished bond salesmen and individuals in the hedge fund space ever, right? That's not unqualified. Pete Hegseth, who's actually a frontline warfighter, unlike Lloyd Austin, who never fought a war in his life, right? We have Kristi Noem, who was an accomplished congresswoman and governor from a major state running Department of Homeland Security. You have Howard Lutnick, who's a very famous and well-known financial mind and titan from...
And here's one thing I want to talk about on this subject. Qualifications can look different on every person. And it's interesting that this statement, this meritocratic hypocrisy statement is coming from a Gen Z student, because a big problem that Gen Z currently has is that they're not able to find jobs, that baby boomers and Gen X aren't training them when they get to work. And if you're a baby boomer or you're Gen X, you can argue that Gen Z is not qualified, that they're not getting through the meritocratic system, that they don't deserve the roles. That's what you can argue if you're Gen X or baby boomer. But I will say this. Meritocracy looks different on everyone. Qualifications for some person may be different for another person, but that does not mean that they are completely unqualified. And I don't want to bring up any specific examples of Donald Trump's cabinet, but I will say this. Donald Trump's cabinet and Biden's cabinet may have different qualifications that they've put on every single person in the cabinet, but that does not mean that one is more qualified than the other. They just have a different set of skills and a different set of qualifications. That does not mean that they're not suited for the job, however.
Wall Street running Cantor Fitzgerald, Marco Rubio, who was a very well-respected U.S. Senator on Foreign Affairs, who's now doing a great job as Secretary of State. So build out your argument why you think this cabinet is unqualified. Seems to me very, very qualified, actually, across the board.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to start with, I mean, this is the most obvious one, and I have many other examples that I'd like to get into, but Pete Hegseth, you mentioned, I think that is kind of, I don't really understand why you would mention somebody that leaked war chats to a liberal journalist. To me, that doesn't seem like the kind of person that I would want to be.
Well, hold on, time out. He did not leak it. First of all,
he added the person.
The person who actually is responsible was just removed as national security advisor today.
Oh, you mean the person who was the fall guy for Pete Hegseth's problem?
No, he added somebody without his knowledge. But fine.
Okay, so why wouldn't he see him? Why wouldn't he see the person who's in the chat before talking about war policy?
So, time out. Just so we're clear, I'm sure you've been added to group chats with 30 or 40 people sometimes, and you enter in with trust that every acronym is actually a government official. Obviously, that will not happen again. Just so we're clear, Signal was an approved chat by the Biden administration. It's an approved secure channel by
I'm not talking shit on Signal.
However, time out. Let me ask a question about Pete Hegseth. Would you rather have a warfighter or a bureaucrat run the United States military?
I would rather have somebody that doesn't have a history of alcoholism. I'd rather have somebody that... I mean, realistically...
Wow. So do you think how about Mark Milley and Lloyd Austin, were they better at running the U.S. military than Pete Hegseth?
I mean, I think you're going to probably start talking about how there's higher enlistment numbers
under
not only
that.
Hegseth.
So recruitment in the military is up majorly. Thank you, Pete Hegseth. He's doing a pretty good job. Number 2, procurement. We're saving money. Estimates are that we'll save hundreds of billions of dollars in efficiency. War games are up. The amount of war games we're doing in the Southeast Pacific has increased by 30%. This is a military town here in San Diego. They have a massive increase in people wanting to join the Navy, wanting to join the military. That wasn't happening under Biden. Morale is actually 30 points higher now that Pete Hegseth, a warfighter's warfighter, is running the U.S. military.
We have a complete difference. We'll never going to agree on this.
No, but not an agree, but then prove the evidence. What is one number that is worse with the U.S. military now that Pete Hegseth's in control?
The numbers that you're talking about are numbers that I actually actively do not care about, because I think that we have an overly powerful military, and I think too much of our money goes to the military.
No, I know, but tell me one thing he's done, numerically, empirically, judge his performance, right? What is one thing that you could say, wow, the Pentagon is in a worst place because of Pete Hegseth?
I would say his inconsistent foreign policy, where he backs on statements depending on whether or not Donald Trump has heard them or not. Like in the beginning, we were talking about what happened with Ukraine and Russia. Like they've had disagreements already within the first couple months of the administration.
What? But first of all, the president is the commander-in-chief, so he executes the running of the military.
I'm just saying that
he's the operationals manager.
I
right?
understand that.
And so when you want a military, you have recruitment going up, you have war games going up, you have morale going up. You have, by the way, how about this? Do you agree that physical fitness standards for men and women should be the same in the U.S. military?
Yes.
Pete Hegseth is to thank for that. He has brought physical fitness standards to be the same for men and women. Lloyd Austin didn't do that. Mark Milley didn't do that. Do you also agree that we should not have like transgender pronoun type policing of our military members on the front lines of combat?
See, the thing is
Pete
that
Hegseth has gotten rid of all that, but I'm saying you're trying to make
a
a contention that he's not qualified.
Okay.
The military is in a much better place thanks to him only after 100 days, man. And that's that is the weakest example of all the ones that you have in the cabinet. You didn't address Rubio, you didn't address Noem, you didn't address Bessent, you didn't address Lutnick, you didn't address Bobby Kennedy, you didn't address all these people. So I have to ask you the question.
I can continue addressing people.
But every one of these departments is in a substantially and an empirically better place than it was.
Okay, including the Department of Education.
So here's the reality. The student does not like Trump. He doesn't like Trump. And rather than, posing an objective argument, he's just attacking Trump's cabinet and saying that they're unqualified. They're all unqualified. I don't think that's a fair argument, in my opinion, because qualifications can look different on every single person. So just saying that they're just all unqualified, it's a cop-out to me. But what do you guys think? Because I don't think it's a fair thing to say, if I'm being 100% honest. Mind you, there could be people who, in his eyes, can be more qualified, but that doesn't necessarily mean that someone else is unqualified for a position. Positions are fluid. It's not one base set of qualifications, especially when it comes to a presidential appointment or a congressional approval. There's not one specific set of things that makes someone qualified or unqualified. Even in my field of engineering, if there's an engineering role, well, I'm going to say this. Once you get to a certain level in engineering, like you have a master's or anything like that, your qualifications for roles become very specific, meaning every single student who has a master's or something has different sets of skills, but that doesn't mean one is more qualified than the other. We just have different sets of skills. And this can be the same thing for Trump's appointments.
And completely defunded, and somebody who literally
I'm so glad it's being defunded.
Okay, I bet you are, but guess what? Most Americans aren't, and that's the reality.
Wrong. Donald Trump.
Okay, yeah, just because you have a bunch of people here saying that doesn't mean that's the reality.
Let me prove it to you. Donald Trump ran on a pledge to get rid of the Department of Education. We can agree with that? No, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. He won a popular vote. The vast majority of people voted knowing that the Department of Education was going to get eliminated.
If you truly believe that the vast majority of people were educated enough about the fact of Donald Trump's opinion
voters aren't very smart. Now that's what we're going after.
No, I'm simply just responding to what you said. What you said
insult the voters. They don't know.
No, I know a lot of people that voted for Trump who had absolutely no idea that he was going to defund and of course this is just an anecdote, but I know that this is the truth. Not everybody when they vote looks at every single little thing and every little aspect like you and I might of why we would vote for somebody. Like we're both political commentators.
Right. Fine. And as a political commentator, then I will argue more forcefully against you because now you're not just like a college kid searching for this. Has education in America improved or gotten worse since the Department of Education was formed?
It has literally been 3 months. I have absolutely no idea.
Since the Department of Education was formed in the 70s. We now have 50 years of evidence. Has American education gotten better since we've had a Department of Education, or has it gotten worse?
I personally don't think that has to do with the Department of Education.
Well, when you've spent over $4.5 trillion with one federal department, and we have 30 schools in Chicago where a fifth grader cannot read at grade level. We have 35 schools in Baltimore where kids cannot do math or reading at grade level. We cannot find a single school, not a single school in downtown Detroit, where by the time they graduate high school in the heavily black areas, that they're proficient in reading or math. We are now like 31st in the industrialized world of education. We spend more in education than almost any other country per capita, and yet our results are worse. Maybe it's because we sent all this money to D.C. to overly centralize the way we educate, and the Department of Education has been a complete disaster. And so we can go anywhere you want with this discussion.
I'm just going to say one more thing about this and we can move on. And thank you for talking to me for this long. I really appreciate it. But you're talking about like people that are coming from poor backgrounds where education in their families is not like a part of the way that they're raised. Of course, they're going to be the ones that have a lower.
No, that's not correct. You
I
see,
highly doubt it.
The competing Catholic schools in the same area that do it for 2/3 less money. Almost all the kids can read by the time they graduate middle school.
And where does that money come from?
Well,
he's getting cooked right now, bro. He's getting cooked in this debate. Like, he's genuinely getting fried. It's not even close. But who do y'all think is winning?
sometimes from charter schools, taxpayers, or from private donors. So take, for example, in downtown Chicago or downtown Philadelphia, the private Catholic school can educate a kid for around $12,000 a year. Philadelphia, it's about $30,000 a year, and none of the kids can read. So the local religious schools, they have kids that are less likely to be unruly, less likely to commit crimes. They're more likely to graduate high school and college. They can read and they could do math. And yet the local public school spends triple what the local Catholic school does, and they can't do any of that stuff. Why? Because a government-run program of education has been a failure in this country. And that's what President Trump is doing by abolishing the Department of Education.
Okay, so how, if there's no public, I'm not saying that the public education system is perfect. I'm saying that having... I think the privatization of public things in general is bad, and obviously that's a very...
Why would you say that? So, I mean that's just...
So he's anti-capitalist, anti-privatization, anti-Trump, anti-conservative. He's anti-all of it. He's anti-everything. Anti-everything.
We can go through the list of that, but...
Because getting rid of, for example, DEI, or getting rid of... And again, I'm not super pro-DEI.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in California. I'll put it that way.
I'll try to apply it to yours. Like where?
Okay, I grew up in one of the most expensive towns in California.
Okay, Montecito. I don't know. I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, something like that. I don't want to talk because I'm a political commentary. I'm not saying my name, but I will tell you.
Fine, but
that seeing that we had three 82-inch TVs in my school for a public school when other kids in Compton had absolutely nothing, and I know a big part of that
why
is
because that? It's property taxes, right? And so.
Yes.
Yes, however, let's just get down to the core of it, which is that in San Diego, are the private schools or the public schools more desirable?
It's kind of complicated because we have charter schools that are public, we have like High Tech High. We have
people pay money to go to private school, right? For a reason. So what is our perspective? The money should follow the child. You should have school choice. You should be able to go to whatever the school of your choosing, and it works super well.
But the good private schools that you talk about these ones in Chicago with cherry-picked data. When we're talking about San Diego, they cost about $40,000 a year.
It's not cherry-picked data.
It is cherry-picked data. Talking about a single example of a Catholic school that's publicly funded or funded by donors.
There's hundreds of these examples.
Okay,
right?
Hundreds of these examples.
So I will say where I'm from, private schools definitely cost a lot. Like they cost a lot, like $40,000-$50,000 a year. And I didn't go to no private school in high school. I went to a science and technology school. I had to test to get into it. But it was no private school. But I'm happy that my county allowed me to do stuff like that. And I wasn't forced to go to my neighborhood school. Although it was nothing, I'm not going to say there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just happy that they let me get that option. But what do you guys think about this video? My name is LFR. And I'll see you in the next one.